to try to consistently provide that oversight. It's going to be challenging. We're going to get it right, but it's just pointing out that there's a lot of moving parts, and this is going to accelerate. And so I'm just trying to figure out how we do this.
I agree with the imprimatur of getting it right, not rushed.
Okay. So a question to CAL FIRE, if I may. Back to that real permanent, verifiable, and quantifiable. I know you have many programs going, and I'm looking forward to seeing which ones are funded at the end of April. There's one that's grabbed interest in a lot of sectors, and that's your urban forestry program. Money is going out the door. I know this is just to disadvantaged communities, and there's a lot of interest that it's not limited to just disadvantaged communities, because tree canopies and carbon sequestration benefit GHG's broader sense than exactly where they're located. So could they be in local parks? Could they be in state parks? Could they be in other communities? There's probably a role for that. But the question is, and I'm an advocate of expanding that urban forestry, how do we make sure that those trees that are planted become sort of permanent fixtures? And they're going to cities. Many cities don't have budgets to maintain trees, and they may not survive a long hot summer or whatever. I know you'll be conscious of putting them in the ground, but where do you have to craft a partnership or maintenance agreement with the entity who is the recipient of the trees?
So specifically, all of the projects have a longer-term minimum 10-year requirement that they have to demonstrate in their application and their proposal for monitoring and maintenance. As you know, for the exact reasons you point out, in the urban communities where budgets vary from large to small, that has been an ongoing challenge. We have a broad, probably the best group of stakeholders and delivery mechanism within our urban community forestry program to find the mechanisms to maintain these projects long term. And I'll ask Chief Shintaka to talk a little bit maybe about the details on that.
Yeah, thank you. The other thing that's integrated into our urban forestry program, Senator, is the fact that we often require a management plan, an inventory. So each tree that's planted as part of our urban forestry program is accounted for. Not to mention that our urban foresters work directly with the communities where these trees are planted to make sure the proper species, spacing, et cetera, for adaptation purposes in particular. So between the two, we feel that we've got a pretty solid foundation in which to secure the success and long-term survivability of those trees we plant.
Yeah, it's just going to be a challenge. I just know in any city we've had tree planting programs, and I'd say, you know, a fourth of those trees within 10 years for a variety of reasons don't make it, right? Car hits one, I mean, whatever the problems are, not replaced. And so just trying to figure out a best way to ensure that it's real, permanent, et cetera. Last question to CFDA. Does the RCD have the training and experience? I was on the board of a resource conservation district to be in the field and do all your work on establishing baselines and quantifying GHG reductions?
Well, and so basically what their role is to verify that the project has been completed. So what our strategy was, and I think many agencies employed this strategy, was to do as much work up front as possible, so that we worked with the academics, we worked with the growers, so that their application.
Well, they're not doing the scientific GHG baseline reduction. That was my question. I inferred from you that was it. And finally, to LAO, or Department of Finance, the low carbon fuel displacement program, does that raise any issues or anything, concerns? Did you follow that, or is that something new?
Raise concerns, from a legal perspective.
Anything to, to make sure that we have complied with everything. I just didn't know how we can, I support what they're trying to do. I just want to make sure that's.
It's really hard to say, I think, given the legal uncertainty, but I mean, the connection, the clear connection there, it might be a little bit more risky than some of the other ones, but that's really sort of a legal matter and one that I think is very difficult for us to opine on.
And maybe we can assist in some way to make sure that we've covered all our bases on it.
Possibly.
The concept is good, but you're sort of in the wishful thinking category and how you can justify that. Anyway, thank you.
Yes.
All right, I'd just like to make one comment about this group of programs and departments. As I look on the assessment of the proposed benefits for your areas, they're pretty, the amount of the cumulative reductions are really quite extraordinary given the investment. And I've argued with not argued, I've advocated for with my colleagues, as Fran knows and Jim knows, that natural resources, namely agriculture as well as wetlands, can bring tremendous amounts of benefits back to this area and other areas. Of course, there are other benefits, and forestry. So I think it's really important that these programs are well organized, and again, I'll have to learn that phrase, but verifiable, whatever. We really need to know, and the legislature needs to know, and the public needs to know, doesn't realize that the extraordinary benefits that could come from many of these areas, particularly in wetlands, agriculture, forestry protection, and compost reduction, all of that.
Water conservation.
Water conservation, absolutely. So all of that's good. So I wish you, I also want to raise the issue, one person mentioned, I think it was Chuck, peer review, which I didn't, every single department who does this, really, an agency, the importance of peer review of your results so that there isn't any question about the accuracy and ultimately the expenditure of the funds. So I encourage, maybe you're all doing it, but it's really available. We have a ton of universities that are public universities, so I hope that all of them are taking advantage of that opportunity. Well worth the expenditure. All right, I want to thank all of you. Now, before we move into high-speed, and excuse you all, before we move into high-speed rail, I need a show of hands as to who wants to make public comment on any of the other programs. Oh, my goodness gracious. All right, I'm going to need the assistance of the sergeant, and I'm going to ask you to, you're going to be limited to a minute. And less is even better.
Or put it in writing.
So, or put it in writing. Will the sergeant please help me? I want them at the, no sitting down. Over at the mic. Thank you. All right, welcome. Please start.
Okay, Madam Chair, Senator Pavley, Senator Nielsen.
And I'll remind everyone, no high-speed rail. We're going to get to that. Okay? So.
I'm Bill McGavin with the Coalition for Clean Air, also the SB 535 Coalition, and Charge Ahead California. And you know, when Samuel Gompers, who built the American Federation of Labor, was asked, what does the American labor movement want? He replied, more. And we are also asking for more investments in disadvantaged communities. We think that you should shoot to exceed the 10% and 25% minimums that are in law. We know that, as LAO has said, there will be more funding available to invest. You have from us a letter from a number of coalitions which advises on how you could spend the first $700 million in additional funding. And particularly in the area of low-carbon transportation, we're asking for $150 million added, especially in the areas of reducing emissions from heavy duty, and in programs for disadvantaged communities for additional equity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Yes, Michael Bocadoro with West Coast Advisors on behalf of the Ag Energy Consumers Association and our dairy member agencies in strong support of the funding for dairy digesters at CDFA. Our point today, and the paper speaks for itself, I'll let it speak for itself, is that the funding levels are not sufficient. Sufficient funds of $10 million will build between 2 and 3 digesters. We need to rapidly expand that to more on the order of $100 million per year. What this paper outlines is the benefits that would be achieved from that. They're not only quantifiable, verifiable, real, and permanent, but they would total 75 million metric tons over the life of the projects if we built 100 digesters in 5 years. This is all short-lived climate pollutants. This is all methane. And so the bang for the buck is greater with this program than any of the others that have been discussed. You heard Cal Recycle talk about $8 per ton. Under this program of this level of investment, you're looking at around $4 per ton.
I'll ask you
and
to
it's
sum
all
up.
methane. Thank you.
Very much. Next, please.
Thank you. This is Julie Malinowski-Ball on behalf of the California Electric Transportation Coalition. I'm actually wearing 2 hats today, if you would be a little patient with me. I am representing Cal ETC along with a coalition of NGOs, automakers interested in the low-carbon transportation portion of this fund. The $200 million was appropriate for last year, but we don't think it meets market demand going forward. In particular, though, this body passed 2 pieces of legislation, SB 1275 and SB 1204, that actually asked for more investments in this. We think the total is more around $350 million, and we hope that the administration and this committee looks at that. On behalf of the California Biomass Energy Alliance, I actually do appreciate the question about what are we not funding that is already in the investment plan. Biomass to energy technologies actually shows up as a solution in 4 categories of the investment plan: in the agricultural sector, in the forest sector, in the energy sector, and in the waste management sector, and yet we're not spending dollars on that. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Good afternoon. Graham Noyes with the Low Carbon Fuels Coalition. I just wanted to touch on some of the points that were raised during the discussion. First of all, the importance of metrics on greenhouse gas reductions. Looking at what's already out there, we've got some very good work from CEC in the recent IPER around their ranges. We've got a similar situation from AB8 in terms of building more metrics into the program. Specific as to the Air Resources Board expenditure of low carbon transportation fuel funds, we're seeing that going predominantly in the direction of transformative technologies, but not necessarily looking to some of the biofuels that are on the ground today that have delivered about 6.5 million metric tons to date, and about 70% of the real reductions that have happened in the sector. Finally, we also need those funds to drive the jobs and economic value of the programs to California. Many of the biofuels are coming in from out of state right now. Opportunity to change that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Lisa Hershey. I'm representing Housing California and the Sustainable Communities for All, and in alliance with many of our partners here today from the 535 Coalition, Rural Smart Growth Working Group, Multi-Coalition, and the Active Transportation Programs, we have 5 shared common themes that I'd like to reference. First of all, we recommend that the legislature plan to invest additional funds, as was noted in the report earlier today, specifically $700 across existing categories identified in the governor's proposed budget. We also recommend that additional funds over the $700 million be considered for new programs, particularly transit passes and the Affordable Transportation Program. We ask that the investment program continue to have this amazing transparency and inclusive stakeholder process. In particular, we're interested in ensuring that all of the programs that were submitted, the applications, we have access to the information so we're able to compare and help our members and communities better apply. Thank you. In summary, I would just like to say we're very grateful for the transparency, and we hope that there's greater consistency across the metrics moving forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Chuck Mills with California Relief, a statewide nonprofit providing support and services to over 90 local and regional urban forestry groups. I want to echo the comments made by Mr. McGavern and Ms. Hershey regarding the need for additional GGRF investments in priority programs, starting with some specific augmentations to existing areas of investment as reflected in the multi-group document that the subcommittee received, but also allowing for new program investments that could include, among others, active transportation. I also want to thank the staff for raising in the agenda the very pertinent question of how to best allocate urban forestry funding as it relates to meeting both statewide needs and the goals of SB 535. This has been a subject of discussion briefly today, but what's not been captured yet, and I'll paraphrase Senator Pavley here, is the missed opportunity to create urban forests in the dozens of other underserved areas in the state. As an example, communities such as Chico, Dixon, Fairfield, Moore Park, all miss the cow environment screen cutoff by 10% or less, yet are completely ineligible under the current structure. For this reason, we're asking the legislature and administration to sustain its commitment to 535 through urban forestry by allocating 65% of these funds for projects located in DACs, while the remaining funds become available for statewide competition. This represents a 10% increase over the current formula for urban forestry projects, while also providing some flexibility to support other underserved areas. Thank you.
Please.
Good afternoon, Jeannie Wardwaller with the Safe Routes to School National Partnership, also representing the California Bicycle Coalition and also a member of the Sustainable Communities for All Coalition. I'm going to just support the comments that Mr. Mills and Ms. Hershey have made, and also just say that we have been working on the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Program closely and are concerned about how active transportation will be funded through that due to some accounting and metrics. So we also would ask that the active transportation program be on the list for allocation and receive $100 million in this year. It's highly popular and oversubscribed, and we'll be doing that behavior change and vehicle mile travel reduction within the year. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Megan Kirkby. I'm Policy Director for the California Housing Partnership. I echo the last three speakers, as well as Bill McGavern, this first speaker. And in addition, I want to say with regard to the weatherization, the low-income weatherization program, we're very excited that there's a multifamily option that they're planning for that program. And we think there's a huge synergy to retrofit the over 500,000 affordable homes that the state housing agencies have created over time. And with regard to the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Program, echo Jeannie's comments on some of the, we do believe that they are using the best model available, but by doing, but it is still a blunt instrument, and there may be places where programs are dropping their dollar request rather than maximizing their GHG reductions. So we think there's some further discussions there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, good afternoon. Michelle Passero with the Nature Conservancy. Thank you. I do echo the comments of California Relief, Coalition for Clean Air and Housing California. Just want to reinforce 3 points. We agree with a lot of the discussion by the committee here that it is important to have meaningful investments in natural resources, forests, wetlands, and urban forests, ag, rangelands. If we get this right, this is one of the only sector where we can not only reduce emissions, but also pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Looking forward, just on a couple of the efforts where I think there could be continued work, learning by doing. Strategic Growth Council program is off to a good start, and we see opportunity for increased integration with green infrastructure, open space, and active transportation. Opportunity to optimize multiple benefits with greenhouse gas reductions. And we also see opportunity to continue to push for more consistency across metrics, greenhouse gas reductions, and also assessing the public benefits, at least within the sectors going forward. Can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Derek Thomas with Sloat Higgins Jensen on Associates on behalf of Recology. Would like to express Recology's support for the money going towards waste reduction. As you alluded to, there's a significant return on investment with the programs under Natural Resources proposal, so we'd increase, should revenues come in higher, an increased allocation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Haley Stewart with Defenders of Wildlife. I'd like to echo what my colleague Michelle Passero and others have said and support the multi-coalition proposal to add $700 million across existing categories. Specifically, we support the funding for natural resources. I want to highlight, like Michelle said, that this is the only sector funded through GGRF that actually sequesters existing carbon from the atmosphere. We need that to meet our California greenhouse gas reduction goals. I'd also like to highlight that we strongly support DFW's wetlands program and feel that this is, a significant way to reduce greenhouse gases as well as provide other incredible co-benefits such as climate adaptation and clean water supply. And in our multi-coalition proposal, we'd like to highlight that there's a suggestion to increase funding by $20 million for the Department of Fish and Wildlife's wetlands program, and we support that proposal. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Mary Rose Taruk with the Asian Pacific Environmental Network and a convener of the SB 535 Coalition. You have our letter in front of you, signed by multiple organizations. We're also supportive of the multi-coalition effort and suggestions. Wanted to point out that right now, disadvantaged communities are identified as 25% of the total population, and so to invest 25% of the funds for 25% of the population is business as usual, and so we really need to do more to invest more of these funds into the communities that are affected by climate pollution. And then in particular for the energy section, we support the Senate staff report that high-speed rail should not be counted as a 535 in this. And then in terms of energy, the question around providers, there are many organizations, community-based organizations and small businesses that should be open the opportunity to be a provider under CSD. Thank you.
Next, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Maribel Nzegun. I'm a staff attorney with Public Advocates, as well as we are leaders in the 535 Coalition, Sustainable Communities for All Coalition, as well as the Bay Area's 6 Wins for Social Equity. And we submitted our recommendations for the increased revenue that will be going into the GGRF, which is a pro rata share of the increased funds to programs in the continuing appropriations programs, and then increased funding for clean freight, low-income energy efficiency, urban forestry, transit passes, and improved access to clean vehicles in disadvantaged communities. I would also like to address 2 of the overarching questions that you included in your agenda around increasing benefits to disadvantaged communities and how to do so. We urge you to go well above the SB 535 minimums, and in both cases, to ensure direct benefits, we need to better target disadvantaged community needs and disadvantaged community households. And so we would like to see—
I'll ask you to sum up, please.
Yes, I'll do so. We would like to see anti-displacement to avoid harm to residents and reduce GHG emissions, transit passes to ensure ridership, and deep affordability to extremely low income and very low income households, including in high opportunity areas such as job centers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before you go on, I'd like to make a comment as to the public comment. In my experience, it seems to me that there needs to be a forum other than this committee for in-depth consideration of the kinds of issues that you're raising, given the amounts of money involved. And I think that's something we're going to look at. It's you're asking for a lot of things, everybody. There's a lot involved here, and there ought to be another forum in which that can really be, considered thoroughly. I remember last year, Senator Pavley and I were talking about this just now, that there wasn't enough of a transparent process, and my commitment is that we'll look at that between now.
It crosses like 6 different policy committees.
Exactly.
Part of the challenge.
Yes. So, yeah.
I have one select committee, but that's it.
Right. Exactly. So we'll take a look at that issue. And I promise you that. In the meantime, it's 1 minute. But don't lose the issue. I won't lose the issue.
I completely agree with you. I'm Alvaro Sanchez from the Green Lending Institute, and our mission at the Green Lending Institute is to ensure that we create a country where race or income level is not a determinant of prosperity. And I echo the sentiments of many of the folks that you've heard today. I'm also part of the 535 Coalition Leadership Committee, and I just want to touch really on disadvantaged communities, and highly encourage you to
fund disadvantaged community programs at a higher level than the minimum of SB 535. A really good way to ensure that maximum benefits are achieved is to make sure that all funded programs require achieving multiple benefits in addition to greenhouse gas reductions. These benefits include jobs for people with barriers to employment, minority and women in business enterprise goals, workforce development and training, and access to new technology for disadvantaged communities. These benefits increase the return on investment on public funding and provide anti-displacement strategies for vulnerable populations within disadvantaged communities. So thank you for your time.
Next, please.
Good afternoon, Adam Coten with the California Climate and Agriculture Network. I wanted to echo Senator Wolk's statement about the importance of agriculture as part of this package. Just coming from the 4th California Climate and Agriculture Summit yesterday, I can tell you that growers are ready and excited and able to employ shovel-ready solutions to the climate problem, both reducing existing GHGs and sequestering carbon in soils and woody biomass. So we would like to see an expansion of focus on those types of efforts through the GGRF. Also wanted to point out the importance of this seldom mentioned but crucial Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Program through the SGC funding for affordable housing and sustainable communities. We'd love to see an expansion of that program, which provides a really important complement to the more urban-focused efforts under that program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Nancy Hughes, California Urban Forest Council. First of all, I want to acknowledge Senator Pavley for suggesting that we might support urban forestry to a greater extent. One of the things I think that we're overlooking in the urban forestry program to date is the standing trees in California's cities. We have over 200 million urban trees, which sequester 4.5 metric million tons a year, which is 6% of the original Climate Action Team's goal to reduce emissions back to 1990 levels. So I think that should be part of the conversation based on climate change, based on pests and diseases and drought. And also, if we could look at increasing the budget by possibly another $15 million. Right now, CAL FIRE has received grants.
I'm going to ask you to sum up, please.
Okay, 7-to-1. Based on the amount of money that is available and what is needed to serve disadvantaged communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Thank you, Bonnie Holmes, Jen, with the American Lung Association in California. Just want to highlight our health perspective when we're looking at this program from how we can increase health and air quality benefits and accelerate our progress toward reducing petroleum dependence, getting to our 80% reduction goals. Specifics, well, just to remind you, we can avoid over $23 billion in health and societal costs by 2025, and we need to capture these benefits, move forward. Augmentations are key, increase at least by $150 million, the budget for the low-carbon transportations and zero-emission vehicles, and just want to see augmentations in active transportation, energy efficiency, and projects benefiting disadvantaged communities. We look forward to working with you, and the public forum that you talked about sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joshua Stark with Transform, member of the 535 Coalition and a convening member of the Sustainable Communities for All Coalition. Thank you for the opportunity here. We fully support and reflect the comments made by our allies in both the 535 Coalition as well as those groups supporting the investments of $700 million of GGRF revenues, which we believe is well within the LAO estimate. In particular, we'd like to note the opportunity to equitably and effectively reduce GHGs through investments in transit passes and active transportation projects and programs. Though both categories are eligible investments, in a few programs, their ability to reduce GHGs in ways that dramatically improve the health, safety, and quality of life of Californians merits direct investment. Recently, a letter calling for an increase in funds in the active transportation program of $100 million gathered the support of over 120 organizations. This program is well suited to receive GGRF funds. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Matthew Klopfenstein on behalf of SMUD. We are a strong supporter of the proposal by Cal ETC and others to raise the low-carbon transportation program from $200 million to $350 million. So thank you very much.
Now, I assume all of you have put, when you make budget requests, I mean, you're all sophisticated lobbyists, all of it's in writing somewhere and given to the committee and given to the policy committees and the leadership. Okay, good. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Shioni Flegel. I'm here representing PolicyLink today, and I would just put one more pin in the appreciation for your call for a process to more fully discuss these issues. We're here because we we really believe that low-income communities and communities of color are hurt first and worst by climate change. We are very grateful for the commitments made under 535, but we know we need to do a lot more. Right now, we're essentially reaching proportional. We're achieving a proportional investment for those places. We're doing very little to address the kind of legacy of disinvestment to really prepare them for the true costs of our changing climate. So we would support the recommendations that the 535 Coalition and the Sustainable Communities Coalition has put forward today. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good afternoon. Charles Watson on behalf of CalSTART. We also support an increase in funding for low-carbon transportation programs, specifically from $200 million to $350 million. And these projects produce real GHG reductions and provide multiple co-benefits, and we think they're very valuable. Thank you.